Hi everyone, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, I really appreciate it. Thank you. First, as a world effect, meaning affecting everyone on the planet, in conjunction to Neptune, where it is, during these years in Aries, meaning this summer, and then most of next year, all of 27, and the first part of 2028, this is what correlates with all the military buildup that we are seeing, and it's a common effect from Aries, Aries being a militaristic sign. And so, as pretty much everyone knows by now, it isn't an easy time. It's difficult. There are, of course, other planets involved in the drama: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. It's seldom a single planet that will do all of this, but certainly Saturn in Aries in that way is not an easy energy. Then, if you look at the US chart, probably even less in the sense of being complicated, because the US is a Cancer country with Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury in Cancer, so then Saturn squares. On the other side, you have Eris and Pluto in Capricorn. It's going to square those as well. And then you have Saturn in Libra, and the midheaven in Libra, and there's even little Chiron in Aries. So basically Saturn is connecting with a whole lot of planets, and being a cardinal energy, it always signifies new starts, new directions, sorting through all of that as it is happening, and it's not going to be easy. In fact, you look at a person's chart, now turning to any individual, if you see Saturn conjoining, opposing, or squaring, which would mean people in those four signs, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer, it is more difficult during those years. Ironically, or interestingly, as it turns out, they're very needed periods. They're important. Life is constant change. There's a constant evolution, a constant moving forward. And so those people, though they find it harder, and where Saturn can become really complicated is, because it tends to be an accountability planet, it can bring in difficulties that have been created in the past. And so then they show up then. But at the same time, it's also a very ambitious energy that can move you forward in your life. And those periods are absolutely necessary. They're essential toward what happens in many years hence. So Saturn becomes really important in that way. But depending on the person, some people are faced with more karma, more accountability than others. It's that simple. And so, yes, definitely challenging for the US. In fact, cardinal Saturns have been difficult for the US even in recent years. The period of 18, 19, and 20, 18 and 19 was just very turbulent in the first Trump administration. 20 was the pandemic. I don't need to tell you how tough that was. And then the Saturn and Libra period, which was end of 2009, 2010, 2011, into the fall, of 2012. That was also very challenging coming out of that financial crisis. And then if you go back to the Saturn in Cancer period in summer of 03 into the summer of 05, that was the Iraq War period, which was also quite turbulent. So it's a challenging energy, there's no question. So in that sense, one level, be aware that it's so. You also know that at some point it ends. The energy shifts, and that you can trust 100%. These cycles are absolutely real. Now, if we turn to our current president, very unfortunately for us, but for him, this planet is challenging for a different reason. See, in his case, he's a Gemini, so Aries to Gemini is a sextile. You wouldn't think that would be a big problem. But this is where you have to always look at an individual chart and calibrate everything, because astrology can be incredibly interesting, but also infuriating. If you make rules to put things in boxes and you expect things to turn out the same way, you can totally miss it, because there may be something in a chart that complicates matters as a result of, for example, in this case, Saturn and Aries. And in the case of Trump, it's because the most vulnerable part of this chart is that Access Hollywood T-square, as I call it, because of what happened in 2016 with the Access Hollywood bus and the fact that it was being triggered. And this is where Saturn is going next year and the year after, and even into the beginning part of 27, because what it's doing is it's triggering those 3 planets in the T-square, the Neptune, Eris, Mercury, and after that, in 27, it'll be squaring the Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 12th house. Whenever you're activating 12th house patterns, it always gets harder. More so if there is accountability being brought into the foreground as a result of previous actions. And when you're a politician, you're always more exposed to that anyway, even if you're a good politician or a good person. It's still going to be more difficult. You can look at any previous president, anyone in public life. Saturn is squaring, opposing, or conjoining. Things tend to get tougher. In this case, they are likely to get much tougher as opposed to just a little bit tougher. And of course, separately, there's the matter that even prior to all this happening, he is transiting through Saturn energy even now in Pisces up to the spring of next year, up to February of next year, which is very difficult for different reasons, because it's connecting to his ascendant, etc. But here we're connecting to the more specifically to the Saturn in Aries period, which is this summer plus starting in February of 26 to the end of 26, all of 27, and the first part of 2028, all of which is very challenging for him. And if you are looking at specifics, a lot of it comes from the meanings of the 9th sign, where the Saturn is going through, which would be foreign affairs, immigration matters, legal matters, and media matters. All of those become more difficult because Saturn contracts the energy, stops you literally. If you see a stop sign on the street in your car, that's Saturn. And the reason it's there is for safety, so that cars don't crash into each other. That would be a good side of Saturn, let's call it, but it's also that way in life. It just stops you. As far as the individual person, the rest of us, Saturn, well, of course, it's good to know where it is in your chart. Because if you know, just the knowing alone, even if it's challenging because it's doing direct squares to planets at different points in the movement, in the cycle, alone knowing is very helpful to bring in ease, because you know you're in it, you know how long it lasts, and indeed, that's a very useful way to deal with it. If all else fails, you wait it out, because it's going to switch, it's going to change. However, an even better approach is to get to work. Do the things that you know you need to do to move your life forward. I notice, for example, that people never, pretty much, I won't say never because, let's say almost never, make important moves in their life toward bringing something new in, bringing important change in, unless Saturn is involved in pressuring them, which, by the way, is another meaning of Saturn. Saturn being the contracting force rules pressure. That can be a secret of life. You need to apply just enough pressure. Too much, it's uncomfortable, it's not good. Too little, and you're not doing anything. You need to apply a little bit of pressure to move yourself forward. So what I notice is that people, when they tell me they maybe stopped drinking too much or eating too much or doing something that was in excess, which in fact is the corruption of the Jupiter archetype, it was Saturn that steps in, and you'll see it in the cycles at that time. And so it's time to get started, time to do something important, and separately, and this is probably even more important, because the overarching meaning of Saturn, as well as being the contracting archetype and becoming skillful at expressing that archetype, Saturn is also the Lord of Time, Chronos, literally in mythology. So this is what drives people crazy about Saturn, because they become too aware of time, hence anxiety, which is I'm here, I'm scared about what's coming next. And so time is getting warped inappropriately. It's getting corrupted in consciousness. So the way to deal with it is to realize that the most skillful Saturn, stellar Saturn, is to bring time closer and closer to you, which is what, is the adage of living in the moment. It's being here now. That is masterful Saturn. By being here now, it means connecting to what you're doing with full focus. And of course, you might say, well, that sounds good, but I try that and then my mind wanders and then I don't do it for very long. Well, here's where you can use Saturn itself to help you, because Saturn, being the ruler of time, will itself tell you, well, why are you trying to do it all at once? Do it in little pieces. So for example, using time, decide, okay, I'll do this for 1 minute, or if you're a little more ambitious, 5 minutes, a short period of time. And at first, you do it by doing it throughout the day in small chunks. What happens when you do that is you are placing a seed in the subconscious that then will help you to remember to do it more frequently, and it becomes more and more possible to find oneself in extended periods where one is more present, just doing whatever is in front of oneself at that time. Simple things, including even walking from one place to another. That's an opportunity to be totally present, totally there in the moment. What this does is it settles the energy. When the energy is settled, you always make better decisions. You know exactly what to do. It's actually the gateway into intuition. This is how you do it. But if you're not already there, then it requires work on your part, which is exactly what Saturn is. And it's a matter of doing it in pieces at first, and then it starts to grow and grow and grow. I've noticed in my own practice that if I can do something for 15 minutes with really good focus, pretty soon I can do it the whole day. And yet at first, getting to those 15 minutes can be quite challenging, but then you already know this is the case, so you simply do your best to get there, and then it begins to work for you instead of against you. And this would be the case if you are in a Saturn period, which can span, in some cases, a couple of years. You can bring about massive growth as a result. Now here, of course, I'm speaking to the most psychological way to approach it. In a lot of people's cases, it might be something where they're in school, working hard to get a degree. That's how the Saturn is operating on a more overt level. But even there, if they understand the psychology, it'll help them to get through that as well. It helps you to achieve. It helps you to move your life forward. Right, I hope that's useful. Be sure to watch the video that I have on Saturn, Jupiter, where I talk about the polarity of these two planets. They're the two biggest in the solar system, and they are pretty much indispensable, these archetypes, if we are to find our best self, our settled self, and even our prosperous self.